Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial and ethically fraught issues in modern medicine: doctors performing sex transition procedures on minors. Now, I know this is a sensitive topic, and emotions run high on both sides. But let's be clear, this isn't about denying anyone's identity or dismissing the struggles of gender dysphoria. This is about protecting children. Minors, by definition, aren't equipped to make life-altering, irreversible decisions about their bodies. And yet we're allowing doctors to perform surgeries and prescribe hormones that could leave them with lifelong consequences. If that doesn't sit right with you, stick with me. Let's unpack why this is a dangerous path and why we need to stop it. First, let's start with the basics. Minors, kids and teenagers, are not allowed to make certain decisions for a reason. They can't vote. They can't drink alcohol. They can't even get a tattoo or pierce certain body parts without parental consent. Why? Because we, as a society, recognize that their brains are still developing. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and understanding long-term consequences, isn't fully mature until your mid-20s. That's science, not opinion. Now imagine a 14-year-old walks into a doctor's office and says, "I identify as disabled. I want you to cut off my healthy arm." That's a real condition, by the way. It's called body integrity dysphoria. Would any ethical doctor agree to that? Of course not. We'd call it malpractice. We'd say, this child needs help, not surgery. So why are we treating requests for sex transition procedures differently? A minor asking for their breasts or genitals to be surgically altered is making a similarly drastic, permanent decision. And yet, some doctors are not only agreeing, they're encouraging it. That's a double standard we can't ignore. Let's talk about what these procedures actually involve. Puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, surgeries like mastectomies or genital reconstruction, these aren't minor interventions. Puberty blockers, often sold as reversible, can impact bone density, fertility, and brain development. Cross-sex hormones can cause sterility, heart problems, and other long-term health risks. And surgeries? They're permanent. If a girl has her healthy breasts removed at 16, or a boy undergoes genital surgery at 17, there's no going back. Now pause for a second. Think about the weight of that. These kids are being allowed to make decisions that could leave them infertile, with altered bodies, and facing a lifetime of medical complications. And here's the kicker. What happens if they regret it? Because regret is real. We're seeing a growing number of detransitioners, people who transitioned as minors, only to realize later that it wasn't the right choice for them. They're left with deepened voices, facial hair, missing body parts, and a profound sense of betrayal. Betrayal by the adults who were supposed to protect them. The medical community has a duty to do no harm, but these procedures, they're doing harm, irreversible harm to kids who can't fully understand the consequences. Let's talk about detransitioners for a moment because their stories are heartbreaking and they're being ignored. These are young people who felt pressured by doctors, therapists, social media, or even well-meaning parents to transition. They were told, this will fix your dysphoria. This will make you happy. But later they realized their dysphoria was rooted in something else: trauma, mental health struggles, societal pressures, and now they're stuck with the consequences. I've read stories of young women who can't breastfeed because their breasts were removed at 15. Young men who can't have children because of hormones they started at 14. And the emotional toll? Devastating. They feel abandoned by the system. Worse, when they speak out, they're dismissed or even attacked as anomalies or anti-trans. But they're not anomalies. They're evidence of a system that's failing. A system that's rushing kids into irreversible decisions without enough caution, without enough evaluation. If we're going to talk about compassion, let's start by listening to them. They deserve better, and so do the kids who might follow in their footsteps. Now, some people will say, but these procedures are life-saving. Gender dysphoric kids are at risk of suicide. And yes, mental health struggles are real, and we need to take them seriously. But here's the thing. The evidence linking these procedures to improve mental health outcomes is weak. Studies are often flawed, short follow-up periods, no control groups, biased samples. Countries like Sweden, Finland, and the UK have started restricting these interventions for minors because the science isn't settled. They're saying that we don't have enough evidence to justify this. So why are we allowing it here? Why are we letting kids be guinea pigs in this medical experiment? Think about history for a second. Doctors used to perform lobotomies, forced sterilizations, and other harmful procedures, all justified by the science of the time. We look back now and cringe. We say, how could they do that? But decades from now, will we look back on this moment with the same horror? The rush to affirm a child's self-reported identity without enough psychological evaluation or time to explore other options? Risks repeating those mistakes. Gender dysphoria is complex. Studies show that 80 to 90% of kids with dysphoria desist by adulthood, if not medically intervened upon. By rushing to treat them with irreversible procedures, we're denying them the chance to grow into their bodies naturally. Let's talk accountability. Doctors who perform these procedures aren't just following a child's wishes, they're making a professional judgment that this is appropriate. But when things go wrong, who pays the price? Not the doctor. It's the child who's left with a permanently altered body. Medical organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics or the World Professional Association for Transgender Health have failed us here. They've succumbed to ideological pressures, prioritizing affirmation over caution. This isn't healthcare. It's activism at the expense of vulnerable kids. And let's talk about the cultural blind spot. We don't let minors take aspirin at school without parental consent. We don't let them get tattoos, but we're letting them undergo experimental, invasive procedures with lifelong implications? That's insane. It's inconsistent, and it's dangerous. Proponents will say, but this is different. It's about identity. But identity is fluid, especially for kids. They're figuring out who they are. That's normal, that's healthy, but instead of giving them time and support, we're rushing them into permanent changes. That's not compassion, that's recklessness. So where do we go from here? First, we need to stop these procedures on minors, period. No puberty blockers, no hormones, no surgeries, not until they're adults, capable of informed consent. That doesn't mean abandoning kids with gender dysphoria. Far from it. We need to invest in comprehensive psychological support. Therapists who will explore all possibilities, not just affirm a child's self-reported identity. We need to give kids time to grow, to explore, to understand themselves without pressure. And we need to hold the medical community accountable. Doctors who perform these procedures should face scrutiny. Medical organizations that endorse them should be challenged. We need rigorous, unbiased research, not ideology-driven guidelines. And we need to listen to detransitioners, to learn from their experiences, to ensure we don't repeat these mistakes. Finally, we need to remember our duty as a society to protect children. They're vulnerable. They're impressionable. They trust us to guide them. And right now, we're failing them. We're letting ideology trump ethics, and kids are paying the price. History will judge us harshly if we don't act. Let's demand better, for their sake and for ours. So here's my challenge to you. Think critically. Ask questions. Don't let emotion or fear of backlash silence you. This isn't about politics. It's about protecting kids. Share this video. Start conversations. Demand accountability. Because if we don't stand up for our children, who will? Thanks for watching. Let's keep this discussion going.
In a world of codes, codes and lights, hidden truths were digital masks. City of the binary nights, awake from the programmed tasks. Eyes open wide to the glitch in the seams. Planets crack the mirror cage. Truth isn't what it seems. Find yourself beyond the digital age.